All right, welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 142 for Friday, April 12, 2024. And as I finish getting ready and move the mic closer and all that stuff, I say welcome. Today we can talk about execute workflow action as we did in Low Code Cafe or anything else you want to talk about. This is an event we do every week. It's every week on Fridays, 10 a.m. Central Time, and we encourage everyone to participate, bring something to share, something that's challenging you. We'll see if we can help get you through it or work together to be better at what we do. All these are recorded, these low code campfires, out on youtube.com/plantanap. We put them out there as soon as we can, usually by the end of the day. And so that's good training content, good reference content. We run this agenda. We say hello and then go around the campfire. If there's any submitted topics or first call, something you want to talk about, we talk about that. After that, we go into some of these other things. And then after an hour or so, we go into the afterglow segment. We turn off the recording, raise a virtual adult beverage, and just enjoy each other for a few more minutes. So we encourage you to join and stay for that as well. If you've got noise behind you, please mute. Other than that, you can submit questions, topics in advance using this QR code, or you can email me and we'll put it on the list. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Patrick, are you going under the name Plantanat today?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot to.
He's incognito.
All right. It's just representing the company as a whole.
I missed that detail when I joined.
Did anyone get a chance to enjoy the eclipse?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Were you?
We're in Chicago, well, the Chicagoland area usually, when not snowbirding, we live in Chicago. And so we drove down to Southern Illinois and I don't know, a little bit north of Carbondale, pretty much the biggest city down there that people might have heard of. There's a school down there. At any rate, we saw the thing in the totality, and it was remarkable.
yeah. We happened just sitting right here where we are in Forney, Texas. It happened to be a totality. Didn't have to go anywhere except the backyard, and it was awfully nice to just. It was more than I thought it was going to be. So very cool. All right, let's dig in. We are at first call. Anybody bring a problem or something to talk about?
Something hopefully quick, and just where's the rules for regex? I have a little project where I'm taking a paragraph and trying to get rid of certain characters and end up with just the words in the paragraph and doing some regex stuff to try to do that. And the replacing non-letters and numbers with a space and then replacing two spaces with one space and that kind of stuff. I must be putting in the wrong values. So I'm wondering where the regex definitions are and how to put it in for like replacing something with a space, for instance. It doesn't seem to be catching it. It seems to be missing the fact that it's a space.
Do we have any regex experts on the call? So I've used two solutions with this, Don. One, there is a website that does a pretty good job of interactively, and see if we can even find it here. Any one of those, but so there's some testers that you can use to do this, and so you can kind of give it a try. The other thing that I've been quite successful with is to use GPT to say, I have this, I want that, and what regex expression would accomplish that for me.
Got it. Yeah, I have found 101 and had done a few things. There were some differences. For instance, when you wanted to do a replace of a string, the replace in a 101 says I forget what the order is, but one says slash dollar, one says slash one, the other one, the product, the Planet app says $1 or the other way around. I'm not sure, but a couple of differences like that, and that's where I was wondering that the where regex says, you know, a slash value slash is delimiting the content inside with the two slashes. It doesn't seem to be doing that with Planet app. There doesn't seem to be a you know, that you would use a delimiter. Whatever you type in the line, I guess is you know, that's the definition. You don't need the delimiter.
Uh, I have kind of forced this to work from time to time. I have a couple of working examples of it, but I can't say I'm any good at it. So um,
That's just toss in my 2 cents. That's what I've done. I've used regex 101 with some success, and sometimes I do have to change a couple things, but I kind of just it's a little bit of trial and error, and usually not too far away from getting it to work well.
Got it. All right, I'll keep playing with it.
sorry we couldn't be more definitive, but that was at least you got us got us off started. Got another one? Got somebody else got something? As always, I do have several things in my back pocket to talk about, but
Well, if we're talking about, it's not really regex, but it's kind of like a mask. I have a form that I want to have the mask limited to 2 decimal points. And when I put the mask in, I'm just not able to get it where it's like allowing anything left of the decimal point and only 2 to the right of decimal point. It's like requiring whatever I put in there. It's requiring like 4 digits on the left. And I didn't really want that part, but I wanted the requirement on the right. I was just using the regular mask option that's built into the form.
that would be text option, text box. I'm just kind of looking up in our, sometimes there's hints that are in our older documentation, so I was checking that real quick. So any experts on the call with mask?
I think there's an ability to I can't remember, but I think there's the ability to do a mask that where the values are not, they don't have to be there. I feel like I've done that before, but I would need to look it up and see.
Yeah, I did some Googling and stuff like that, and I just could not get it to work. I don't even know how many different versions I tried. Um, but
So
it
you're
definitely
so you're trying to enter a decimal number and you want a couple of decimal points, is that correct?
yeah, and I don't really care if there's anything on the left of the decimal point, but I definitely want it to be
It's
no
a lot.
more than 2 on the right.
Mhm.
But let's say you want to just do 1.1, well, that should be accepted. Or you wanted to do 1,000, well, it probably won't be 1,000, 900.37, or just 900. It's really easy to do it with the display on the grids and all that kind of stuff, but just the input was giving me lots of problems.
right, so we have a mask optionally. So
Like I would think what would work would be 000, yeah, something like that, yeah. So no, that one won't allow entry of 2 decimals, 2 on the other side of the decimal. So it's like forced.
yeah, it jumps over. It works really quite well for a phone number or a social security number where it's skipping the hyphens, for example, but not.
Or what if is there something else that it could be like once it's entered, it displays only to 2 decimal points. It displays to exactly 2 decimal points. Like not even maybe with JavaScript or something, like not even that it forces a mask, but it absolutely does not allow, it'll just truncate or whatever. I could probably do that with JavaScript instead on field change.
Yeah, mask is, I don't know how to get mask to do what it is that you're after. So then um, doing a text with a validation. You could get you could force it to be some kind of a number here with that, and then apply some truncation logic after the fact.
Yeah, with JavaScript, I think. I think that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Or a custom validator, I believe would do the trick too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Custom validator, that's a great idea. I know how to do that because Patrick taught me.
So let's see, while we're here, if we flip this to an SSN and, do something like that. Oh, mask options.
For some reason, that documentation points to date
Yeah.
time picker.
Yeah, I
Oops.
didn't get that to work.
That's just a bonus.
Yeah.
And was
see.
it me, or is that star that says represents an alphanumeric? Was that working?
I didn't get it. I could not get it to work.
It looks like the stars show up as
Just
stars.
stars. Mhm.
Yeah, it's not acting as this documentation says it should.
Alphanumeric A to Z. So it is conforming to the format. It just looks funny until you start typing into it.
Oh, I think you know why? Because if you mix the two, it looks weird. The the placeholder for a star is a star, whereas the placeholder for a numeric is an underscore. It's not following the same convention. So when you mix the two, your mask looks weird. I would have expected everything to be underscores.
Yeah. Social security number. So yeah, I'm typing alphabetics and it's ignoring those. But
I see what Ben's saying, that if you put if you do that 00 and then a dash star star dash 00, you're going to get underscores, then dash star star, then dash underscores, and it does look like that. That does look odd.
does enforce the
Yeah, it works.
type
Yeah.
as
Type, yeah.
it would be interesting to know if mask options actually, well, it says reverse true is a possibility. So anybody ever use that?
I think the correct link to documentation does exist, and I think that's what I've used in the past to that I've successfully done something in the past that where you don't have to necessarily, you don't have to enter something, but I don't remember what the syntax is, or
This really sounds like an area where we can help. So if you put that down as a
yeah, that
Yeah, typically it's question mark, but I tried that and it didn't accept it.
I wonder what reverse is true does. I don't see any. Well, okay, we're seeing. See the dash floats there. It doesn't. It moves as I type. Let's take that out, and or actually we'll duplicate it here and do another one. This will be SSN2, and we will not use that, and we'll get rid of that. See, it doesn't float. So there are definitely some options that are available there. So we'll find the right one, maybe even by next week, and have a part 2 on this, and we'll push through a change to the documentation as well to get that to make sense. But I think you found a reasonable option for text box. Just making sure that mask options aren't even part of this documentation.
So Jen, just curious, that reverse that Dale just showed, that should, I think, work for you.
Give a
I mean,
float.
If you
if we
do,
get the right,
if you do 4 zeros dot 00 and then activate the reverse JSON option,
oh, is that working?
it
We'll see.
seemed to work for me.
Okay. Try that.
First one now is still set to reverse true, and we've got that. So the thing is, you can't type a
You have to
can't
type
the
the.
decimal.
Oh, you
type
can't
the
type it. Okay.
If you knew it was going to be so the decimal point shows up, you have to type at least 3 digits, but then you get what you want to do here. 0, 1, 5, 5. 1 point. See, I'm typing the point, nothing happens. But 0, 0. So yeah, kind of works, but it again that ideally when you hit the decimal point, that it would jump to that spot, so that because somebody would have to be trained to would not
Yeah,
expect this kind of
that's
behavior.
probably more confusing. I'm gonna leave it off for now, and either we'll figure it out, or maybe if we get the documentation, I'll dig into that. Or I'll search for the documentation maybe.
So Patrick, do you mind taking a note about searching for that particular one?
Yep, sure.
Thanks. All right, we are. Anyone else? First call. Something you would like to talk about? Let me check in version 126 beta. Internally, we are progressing with installing more, upgrading more systems to 126. Yesterday, I upgraded the community portal and had no problem with that, other than some stuff we'll talk about that is more about, wasn't about 126. The 126 installed just fine. Anyone doing anything with 126 yet?
I did install it, downloaded, installed it, did the pre-checks without any issues on a 125 site. Made it all the way through, but I haven't started the testing yet.
Yeah. Thanks for your efforts. We know we're going on at least a couple more weeks with the beta, but so there's still time. But we love the feedback. Anybody catch the execute workflow action and have any interesting use cases for that? The let's see. Here on my website that I was working this last cafe here, and of course it's gone to sleep. But execute workflow lets you call a workflow dynamically. So has anybody used this? Anybody see the episode and have an interesting case for it?
I see the interesting case and to simplify other workflows that I have. Right now I have some workflows that do a lot of if conditioning where I call different workflows based on, an if condition. This way I could just put it into a variable and have one workflow that's doing it, or one action in a workflow, and not have such a hard trace of my pattern.
Yep. For anyone that missed it, the idea was that we're delivering emails, and each person could have a different, or actually multiple ways of delivering, or I said emails, but messages, different ways to deliver them. And so dynamically to be able to say that I want to add a method to, so like message by SMS when it's a medium urgency, that attaching messages to attaching the behind the scenes, this is a workflow, a GUID of a workflow. And so then this logic when we get into message delivery. It looks up, well, what have they subscribed to, and so for a given message, it will deliver it the way that they want, and it just calls the workflow that does that particular functionality, which leaves an open-ended functionality. So anyway, if you missed it, it's out there on YouTube to play back. But that's the pattern we were introducing, and that comes in fully in 1.26. Cool. I also shared a technique about local date and time, and didn't know if anybody else has a better way to do local date and time. The idea is you want to be able to browse to a website and have a form or even a button on a grid, be able to say what time it is currently, or to be able to convert a time to local time. So, this is agreeing with me that it's 10:27 today. Here it's showing it there as well in the form. I don't think that I've put this out onto the Campfire website yet, but I did share the tokens. With grid there is a well, let's see, with form there is a token called _time zone offset that gives you how many minutes different you are from UTC, so you can use that in a conversion token. Oddly enough, listings have the same thing, except it is called $time zone, and it's a negative number. So depending on which tool you're using, you have to do a little bit different math to accomplish getting the local time. So anybody displaying local time having this problem? I was hoping there's a better way, because behind the scenes, this is a pretty nice long token. Listen to this. So you have to take and I put it on the chat in case you want to use it. You take the current ISO time and offset it by the time zone, and then format it down to whatever you want, using the standard date replacement stuff. With forms, it's a little bit different. Because of that math issue, you instead of just using the time zone offset, you've got to multiply it times -1, which brings a do math or something like that into play. But then you're still using the datetime convert to work with that offset and produce it in a format that you want. Anyway, we'll put that out as an example on Campfire, just so that if you bump into it, that it's there for you. So we've talked about this before, that these are standards that we're employing. Our Low Code Development Playbook is the standards we're employing internally to development projects when we work for customers, and thought they might be useful to bring up in case you want to adopt them. We're certainly not enforcing them by any means. So one of our internals is that low-code applications should have versioning set up. So this is the versioning feature, which is an enterprise feature, but is available if you are on our infrastructure. And you have the appropriate license. So it just everything that you're doing, and I think we've demonstrated this before, everything that you're doing gets, you have the option to push it by way of our version control, and it sends these this content to Git, and it allows sending these changes, and of course our eventual goal is to be able to use this to push things between environments, but in the meantime it's good tracking and auditability, and the ability to restore from them if absolutely necessary. We can help you get it out of the Git. Pretty easy to set up, and I haven't set this up for Campfire, and I could run through it if anybody's interested. Otherwise, I'll just do that offline. Anybody have interest in seeing how to set up a versioning?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Ditto.
Good.
I second that.
Well, all right. Thanks.
Third.
Thanks for feeding feedback. So let's see. This is in the Campfire website. If you were to go into the configuration page, we see that there's 653 changes because it just hasn't been it always starts to count as soon as you get an app. It starts to count how many changes there have been every time you start doing development. Version control asks for three things: a URL, username, access token. So you're going to need all those things. You need a Git repository. I'm going to put this into our Plant and App projects. So you would, but wherever you're, you create a repository. I'm going to call this Campfire. We had an older one out there, and I'm not gonna try to overwrite it. I'm just going to do a brand new one. But this is for, we can say whatever you want here in the repository description. I'm going to say that it's for campfire.com. It's a private repository, and I'm going to share this with anybody. And so you create it. As soon as you create it, this gives you a URL for it, so we can start filling in our form. The URL goes here. Then it needs a username, and my username within the site, oddly enough, is Dale-Warner. This is where the credential I'm about to create is connected to this. So final thing you need is personal access token. The personal access token is available if you go to settings, developer settings. Will let you get to personal access tokens, and I'm going to do a new token. And so we say generate new token, and I'm going to use the classic, and it's for the same, I'm going to record what this is for. campfireplantanapp.com. This is pretty useful. I like to make them with no expiration date, because otherwise, if they have an expiration date, you're going to get to a spot all of a sudden where you're trying to push changes through, and it's not going to be able to connect to the repository. And so then you'll just have to come back here and create a new token. That's not, we handle it okay, but if you, unless you have a real purpose for limiting it, for this purpose, I would say no expiration. And then you just have to check repo. So I'm going to drag this over my other screen because it's about to reveal the super secret token. As soon as you hit go, it gives you the token. I'm going to put that on my clipboard. And so then that goes back into that spot. So we've got these three things filled in. We say submit. we start getting messages. And the first thing that it wants to do after it connects is to let you initialize and do an initial commit. So this is just pushing everything. All 653 changes are going to get pushed right now. And then, assuming success with all this, that from this point forward, anytime you make a change, you can optionally push it to your Git repository. So it says it's been successful. We know when we've browsed to version control, we get the version control thing. If your credential does expire, this is the spot you can use configure Git credential to redo it. At any time, you can use the full site commit, so it just says send everything right now. But when you look in your repository, you're going to see two branches, and you're going to want to switch to your production branch. And now you can see that all the things that have been sent to it. So, for example, everything it has a now date on it. This is the thing that we just committed. And you can, if you're interested, dig in and see what's in there. So there's these different, these are work namespaces. And if we look at within that, there's different the different content, the actual JSON and the diagram, and I've documented elsewhere how to pull out of these if you want to restore it. It's possible. It's not that easy at this point, but it's possible. So that sends it to it. And then if we were making changes to things that, I mean, now that it's set up, how do you use it? If we were to edit a workflow and do something a little different, let's add a little note call out. Change we make for this demonstration purpose, but as soon as we save it, version control will recognize that there's a change. And so however many changes that you have, you can go to version control and select them and push them. So we see all of our changes. I want to include this. So these are the changes. I'm going to include it in my push. So it comes over here. And then I say commit changes. That gets committed to the version control. And so now we see the title and the details showing up here as a separate thing. If we go back to our repository, and I assume I have to refresh here. I go to, yeah, we see now that there's been another commit, and while these other ones are 3 minutes ago, the workflow that I changed is going to be now. So there's a commit here to this Campfire workflow. This particular one is the one that I changed. That's the high level view. Questions? Did I miss anything?
You're doing this on a hosted platform. Does 126 still require the MEO installation?
It does.
And has the MEO? Okay.
The hosted one, we have a hosted MEO, multi-environment orchestrator is what that is. But we have a hosted one, and you can use it. Currently, if you're self-hosted, you would also have to set up a MEO.
And have the self-hosted instructions for MEO been released yet and or corrected yet?
They are released. I didn't know if there are errors in them.
I'll send you my ticket number.
Okay. In the documentation installation guide. Yeah, if there's errors in the documentation, then yes, send me your ticket. I had forgotten about that. I'm looking at the comments here. Matt. You brought up a good example in the date and time. Another that comes to mind is the button styles in Grid then in Form. I think that, Patrick, you can correct me. I think that there is a ticket, and it's certainly an annoyance that buttons are different between forms and listings, but I don't. It's not part of an active project to make them be consistent that I'm
Right.
aware of.
And I guess, yeah, there is a ticket too that outlines the differences between forms and grids as far as buttons are concerned, to align the experience.
I'm sorry, there is a what?
There's a ticket for that, but I don't think. But you're right; it's not actively being worked on.
Okay, thank you. And then Ben is asking about one UI difference starting from 126 versus 125. I'm not aware of there's a few UI differences. So this is 126. There's a few UI differences, but I think that's more in the
Yeah, he's seeing the prompt for the MEO URL that and your demo did not show that because your MEO URL is implicit because you're on our system.
yes.
Yep. So you did not have to enter a MEO URL.
Correct. We this in yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. So if you are not on our infrastructure, you get a different first screen. It is documented in the in the online documentation, the learn.planemapp site. But yeah, you have to specify a MEO. So it is a little bit different if you're on our infrastructure. But then there are other UI things. Yep. And must it be used with Docker? I think that's how we're releasing it. Again, Patrick, you have familiarity with that question?
Yeah, that's correct. It does.
Okay. Yep. Good. All right, so this is the spot where I hope to start up a discussion. I came into, I told you that yesterday I was cloning, or actually upgrading, the community website. I did that by cloning it first so that I could test the upgrade on a clone and learn everything that I could learn before I inflicted on this production system. One of the things that I learned is that this system, which was developed, I don't know, 3 years ago, doesn't follow what we have in our development playbook now. And so there are some things like there are some hard-coded URLs that's not using domain root, and there are some other things that are they're just annoying to me. I think that a system, well, let's put it this way. In order for me to be able to test the clone of community, I didn't want to send emails to all you guys every time I entered a test ticket. I think there ought to be a development mode or a non-production mode to prevent that, rather than me having to figure out different ways to prevent the system from interacting with either people or other systems, things like that. So the discussion of my thesis is that this didn't happen when we developed this. If you were to do development in a completely separate environment, knowing that you're going to switch it from development to production, it would set a mindset to say, well, so I want to do this in development, I want to do that in production, and so I'm going to build some switches or some differences so that we can easily do that. But specifically, I mean, there's other reasons that you might want to do that as well. If you're going to keep an ongoing development environment and keep them as close as possible. But I'm thinking particularly for the use of for cloning, right? So that you're because anytime that you're going to apply an upgrade, and especially a major upgrade to production system that just has to work, making a clone is a great best practice. So testing it out on a clone, but then there's some things that are annoying. So that's the introduction. And I've thrown out some bullet points, but I'd like, and I'll, touch on them some more. But the question, if you either do this already and have ideas about things that should be part of this, or if there's things that occur to you that we should jot down, I will include that when I write up my play. But we've talked about the idea of using URL domain root, which if you have a different URL to your site in development versus production, that it substitutes, this token substitutes that in. So rather than hard coding a domain in there, that you can use something like URL domain root. I know that when I've done other systems, I have something like a token that is a configuration is production, a true false flag, so that everything that you do could be conditioned off of that. If it's logic that, like sending an email or interacting with an outside system, making an API call, automations running anything, you could do a lot of things off of some flags. And so setting a flag in a token might be a way to go. And there's other things, but let me stop there. You guys have any feedback on whether Ben raised his hand, please.
So yes, I do this actually quite often, taking the live site and cloning it. And similar to what you're saying with like email handling and things like that, the idea of having like a universal flag is production. Initially, I thought, oh, that would be really cool. But my only concern, I guess I would say, about that is that that's still a manual process. So you'd have to remember to flip that switch. And if you don't, you could get yourself into some hot water. Whereas what I do is I use the domain root, that URL domain root, and I put it in all my code saying, if the domain root is my testing URL, it's going to have some logic that it runs. And if it's not the testing URL, then it runs the live logic. I don't have to do anything. As soon as I restore that live to a clone site, if it matches that URL, it's going to use the development logic as opposed to live. So, having that switch config is production, like I said, initially it's like a neat idea, but it's still a manual process. And if that person creates the clone and forgets to check it off and then does something that kicks off, 150 emails, oops, they are going to be up a creek in a way. Whereas if you just, as a programmer, if you put it in your code from the get-go, as long as you're on the correct domains, the system will automatically know the difference. And then the other thing I want to say is definitely would love the ability to disable all automations with one click, because that kills me. I have so many automations, and when I clone it, some of these are running, at a 1 minute interval. Some of them are running at 5 minute interval, whatever. I have to remember as soon as I get that website up and running, I got to run to automations and immediately start one by one, off, and turn everything off, because sometimes the live and the production and the development site are running the same automations. So they could be kicking off emails at the same exact time, and people are getting duplicates of things and whatnot.
So this, I think, is an excellent suggestion, what you just mentioned, using domain root for automatic logic selection, just the way it comes up. But I'm thinking maybe there's a combination of this. If you use that, instead of having your domain root, your URL encoded throughout the site, if you put it into a single token that results in either a true false or a which system is running kind of a thing, then you have a global definition that you can easy to maintain, but still gets that instantaneous. If you bring it up as a clone, it's it automatically is returning false or a different name, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. In that respect, yes. If, like, for example, if config is production is a token that is looking at domain root,
yeah,
and then returning the true false, then all you would have to use is config as production. Absolutely, because then it's not a switch you're manually having to flip. It's just automatically looking at your URL and seeing, am I on production? If I'm not, run development logic, because
yep.
A, B, C, and D.
And yeah, so I think that's a great thing that we could incorporate into our play. I have the same thing that you've brought up about being able to disable automations globally, and because we don't have that as a built-in feature of the product, I was coming to the place of saying that this same flag could be incorporated to automatically abort anything that is on. It's inconvenient because now you can't just simply turn them on or off. You would have to modify them, but at least it's you could get them to come up as off by default, but it's it would be a nice. I've long agreed that, I mean, that even before I worked for Planting App, that would be a useful feature.
It would be nice if there was like a checkbox when you configure an automation to just do you run this as production only or something that looks at that flag. So when you configure your automations, you could just say we never want to run this in a test environment. But you could go in and flip when you're building it or something like that.
You beat me to it. What I was going to say, I think, is exactly what you just said, is it would be nice if maybe in the automations we had a condition, a run condition, where we could use, like, for example, config is production, which looked at domain root and whatever, and say if it's true that it's in production, run. And if it's not, don't run. So we could put anything that we want in that condition, or at least in the triggers of the condition, if not the condition itself. So each trigger can have, its own condition on whether it should run or not.
Yeah, I would just like it to be an easy toggle as opposed to having to modify complex conditions, that might already be out there in an automation.
So you could talk about like a constant token, you mean? And then if constant token equal production, then run. If constant token equal
Not equal production.
development. Yeah, or not equal production. And then you just change the constant. You change one token, the value of one token.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying before. That would mean you manually have to remember to do that, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
If you use domain root, you wouldn't have to even consider it. Your token is looking at domain root. So the moment you restore your live site to something other than the live production URL, the system immediately knows that you're in a development environment.
And we can get here today. This is possible. The question is, what do we do with automations? If you could in your automations, for example, you could throw everything into an execute actions with that as a condition. So you could get there. It's just work on you. If we added conditions as a feature of whether or not an automation would run, then it would be a lot easier to differentiate. I mean, without it, it would simply be a condition. And I should point to something here. So let me do this.
I mean, you could still do it now. It's a little bit of a roundabout way, but there is the stop execution action. If you put that as your very first action with a condition of, that it's not production. So if not production equals true, stop. But then there's no, like, you'd have to, I don't know. I either way, I guess, works.
So something like this, stop if it's not is production, something like that. So a one action can get you there. It's a little, you have to know to do it. You have to know, versus having an overall run condition, which I think, we have an action engine that does conditions. It would be something of a change to add the run condition in there. So anyway, you can get there today. This will work. It's just
I mean, I would like to see it on the trigger level itself, because the only way these runs is, obviously if it's triggered. But if we put the condition of the trigger, or the condition on the trigger, I should say, the nice thing is that if you have something that has multiple triggers, and let's say it's only one type of trigger. So let's say you had one trigger that was on change of database, but another trigger that was every 2 minutes. The 2-minute one is the one that you don't want to run unless it's in production. Yeah. So you could then put your condition on that one piece and leave the other condition alone, or the other trigger alone, rather.
Unfortunately, I'm guessing that triggers don't really have context where they in the way that they live. I'm not certain of that, but I don't think they do. This like a time trigger is putting an entry someplace that says, "Wake me up on this interval," and it gets context once it wakes up. So I don't know that it would know, for example, whether or not it's production until it actually was in progress. So
Well, then the other option is that whatever trigger was run to activate the automation, if there could be a background hidden token, so to
There
speak,
is.
that tells us what the trigger was, and then you could put that into your action
And
stack.
there is that. So
Okay.
you can look for that, and let's see. I don't think the new actions that yeah, that even here. Oh, this is a 125. I'm jumping in on. Let me jump over to 126 and automation and new and select. Yeah, they may not be here yet. Yeah, so it's not here yet, but those new actions are just waiting to be released and merged, so that'll happen. Anyway, you can discover what those are, but triggers do have an action to say what type of trigger is running. Do have they do inject content to say what trigger is running, so that's findable with my little utility or the actions that we're about to release.
Well, if you guys are working on that, there's one thing I would like, if it's not already in the works, to add to that is the name of the automation that was run.
That sounds like a feature request.
Mhm.
But I absolutely agree. I think that the name of the workflow that's running, or the name of the API that's running, the name of the automation that's running, I'd vote for that if you put it in there. Drop it
I
in.
have to check. I might have put it in there, but I know there are certain situations where, like, I wish I knew the name of the automation that was running, because then, for example, if I pass that to a workflow, the workflow would behave differently if I ran it manually versus if I ran it through an automation.
Yep.
And there's no way to dynamically know that.
So since we've used up our hour, I'm going to stop it here. But I think I'm going to plan to come back to this topic in a week. I think that there's other things that are useful here as good practices, and so if you get inspired and want to jot them down or send some to me, we'll continue to expand. What do we do on a clone/development system? But thanks for engaging with me on that. Do join us again next week. Let's see, we have do and participate in the beta. All that helps us and the community as a whole. So glad that you spend your hour with us. We will do this again in a week. Thanks all.
Thank you.